Anenu boirenu, anenu, anenu goyale. Anenu kelanenu nanenu, anenu vasid vechosid anenu, anenu zach v'yoshor anenu.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our lecture tonight with Rabbi Manis Friedman. We are still having people coming into the room, so bear with me as I allow them in, and I will make the introduction very shortly. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our program. As you well know, tonight's program is part of the weekly Sundays at 7 series, which is powered by the Chabad Westmount Urban Lectures. We've taken a hiatus for the summer, and now we're back, getting ready for the high holidays with the most inspirational teacher, rabbi, lecturer, author. We're very fortunate to have with us tonight Rabbi Manis Friedman. I have some people still coming into the room, so I'm going to be allowing these people in as I speak to you. Okay, so you'll bear with me as I multitask here. As you know, we've had a lot of guests in the past. We've had Harvard Law Professor Alan Dershowitz, Dr. Danny Roth, Dr. Leba Wolf. We had Hasidic scholar Rivka Slanim, White House advisor Tevi Troy. We've had a tribute to Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz and much more. Most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Dvorah Shanowitz, and I'm honored to be part of the wonderful team at Chabad of Westmount. Tonight's lecture is part of something we call Sundays at 7, and it's part of our Zoom educational outreach and a project of the Chabad Westmount Erwin Beitel lecture series. In this series, Erwin's beautiful neshama lives on. I want to share with you that we offer many classes on Zoom. We've just had a law symposium for lawyers. We have a very popular class with Rabbi Yossi on Wednesday. I give a class on Monday for women. Tomorrow I'm going to give one before Rosh Hashanah. And we look forward to having you join us for the myriad of classes and events that we have. Rabbi Yossi usually begins with a Dvar Torah, but today he is at Shul, davening Mincha, so he'll be joining us later on. And I would just like to remind you that we're going to take all our questions through text today at 514-591-6744. Today, we are getting very close to the high holidays, and it's a period of introspection and connection. And we also review our lives and what meaning we have in our lives. I was very excited to see that a very frequent guest of our program and someone who's come to our Chabadis many times, Rabbi Manis Friedman, has just released a book, highly acclaimed book, called Creating a Life That Matters. And when I checked on it, I think it was a week ago, it was still on Amazon only, but I think only on, it was only on the Kindle version, but now I think it's in print. And I'm sure, as everyone who comes here tonight knows, that Rabbi Manis Friedman brings a unique perspective, something that makes us all think, go out of our boxes a little bit, try to reframe the conversation that we usually have with ourselves and with others. And I am sure that tonight is going to be no different than any other time that Rabbi Friedman joins us. This is especially true that we're coming to a new year. We're coming to a new year with a lot of baggage. And we talk about creating a life that matters. Certainly, we want to hear about a year that matters. We're all looking for inspiration in our lives. We're looking for direction. So it is a great honor and a pleasure to have with us Rabbi Friedman. Now, for those of you who are here, many of you do already know about Rabbi Friedman. For those of you who do not, Rabbi Friedman is a world-renowned lecturer. He's a best-selling author. He's a social philosopher. He's a critic, a deep teacher, a deep understander of Hasidic and Jewish mysticism. He has appeared on CNN, A&E Reviews, PBS, BBC Worldwide. He's been the subject of a myriad of articles in the New York Times, Rolling Stone, 17, Guidepost, Inside, Publisher Weekly, and others. As you see that Rabbi Friedman touches a chord that really inspires people and draws people into the conversation. Rabbi Friedman has helped thousands find balance and fulfillment in their relationships, and he is a sought-out speaker all over the world. And he has lectured in about every single continent, I think every single continent, Asia, Australia, Africa, Europe, North and South America. And as I mentioned before, his latest book is Creating a Life That Matters. And it's available, I believe it's available right now on Amazon. And so we're very, very honored to have Rabbi Friedman join us tonight. Rabbi Friedman, welcome. Thank you for joining us, especially as we are so close to Rosh Hashanah. Tomorrow night, Rosh Hashanah begins. And I think we're all excited to hear some words of inspiration and also some reflection on our lives and how we live it and what matters and what we should look forward to when we come going to the new year. So without further ado, Rabbi Manis Friedman, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really meaningful for me to be speaking to a community in Montreal because that's where I got my education. In the yeshiva in Montreal, I had the best years of my schooling years. 65 and 66, the year of 65 and 66. So as we're getting ready for the new year and saying goodbye to the old one, the old and tired new year, old year. We're saying goodbye to it. We're done with it. Hopefully it's finished and will never come back. And we are very ready for a new year, a new beginning.
Amen, indeed. Indeed.
So we can be very optimistic that the new year will be a vast improvement. Because it wouldn't take much to be an improvement. But it's got to be a vast improvement to make up for the past year. Or 2. Or 3. What exactly is a new year? The reason that God created the world in such time sections where past, present, and future are separate and independent is so that all the negativity that exists one year need not carry over into the next year. That's why there's a break. It doesn't flow automatically. At the end of a year, there's a break. Everything stops for a second and needs to be recalibrated and start anew. Like when you turn off your phone and let it reboot, it starts off fresh. So the problems that existed before are gone somehow. So the idea that a year ends and another year begins is simply for one purpose, and that is that the negativity of the past year should come to an end. The good stuff of the past year should never come to an end. And it is not affected by the end of the year, because goodness does not end. Goodness and holiness is forever. So the end of a year means the end of its problems. A new year means the potential for vastly new and improved goodness. So we enter a new year not on a negative note, not on an anxious note, but on a very optimistic one. Let's think about it a little deeper. Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation, which firstly means that everybody, not only Jews, but everybody should be celebrating or at least appreciating this holiday. It's the anniversary of creation. All of us created when Adam and Eve were created. And so we celebrate Rosh Hashanah actually on the sixth day of creation, the day that Adam and Eve were created. Because until the human being came into the world, none of it had any significance. So on the first day, God said, "Let there be light." But what is the purpose or the value of light if there's no one there to appreciate it? On the second day, God made dry land. On the third day, the earth gave out vegetation, plants and flowers. None of it means anything until the human being arrives. So on the sixth day of creation, we celebrate the creation, all of it. So on this day, non-Jews should be observing, celebrating. Angels should be celebrating because they were also created. Even fish in the ocean. It's the anniversary for every living thing. How do we celebrate it? On the day that Adam and Eve were born, God became the king of the universe. Previously, he was the creator. Now he became the king because he now had subjects. He can't be a king over no one. So when Adam and Eve were created, they invited God to be their king. And they said to the rest of creation, "Come, let us bow down to our king." Now, in Hebrew, the word melech, king, is different from the word moshel, which means ruler. A ruler rules by force. A king is king only by consent. And that's why it's essential that the world's population coronate God as their king, because a king has to be accepted willingly by the subjects. Otherwise, he's a dictator. God is a king, not a dictator. Now, being a king is a pretty messy job. To be the king of a country, you have to take responsibility for the superstructure. You have to be responsible for the safety of the people, well-being of the people, for the prosperity of the people. You have to provide food, you have to provide housing, roads. It's a menial task. For God to be the king of the universe is not very enjoyable. What makes it enjoyable is the relationship with the people. So on Rosh Hashanah, our task is to make the world more appealing to God, so that being the king of this world would be more pleasurable and less drudgery. God is going to be our king for another year, because if he's not, the world's going to fall apart. So to keep his creation going, he has to be the king. But there's very little pleasure in that. When we coronate him, when we dedicate ourselves to him, when we tell God we're on the same page, we want you to be our king, and we want only you to be our king. Ein lanu melech elo ata. We have no other king because we want no other king. We don't believe in other kings. We don't trust other kings. Not even politicians. We don't put any trust in them. We put all our trust in one king, the king of the universe, the master of the universe, and we want to be partners. We're not just going to take and make demands. We're going to partner with God to make the world a godly place the way God wants. And that would make being our king a pleasure. Every year, according to Kabbalah, every year when God becomes king again, it's on a higher level than the previous year. So in the year 5782, there is going to be more pleasure for God in being our king than ever before. The world progresses. We don't always see it. We don't always feel it. We don't always appreciate it. But God's plan moves forward all the time. And a useful example for that is you have this huge ship, and it is headed for the promised land. The people on the ship are not always aware of what the destination is and in which direction the ship is going. So imagine the ship is going eastward towards Jerusalem. The people on the ship are walking on the deck of the ship. They are walking towards the west. Should we worry? Should we panic? Are we on the wrong course? Are we going to end up in the wrong place? Not at all. The ship moves in the direction that it needs to move because God is the captain. It will always move forward. The sad thing is that some of the people on the ship don't even enjoy the journey. They think they're going towards the west, or that they should be moving towards the west. So they walk westward as they're going eastward. Our job is to enlighten the world, not to get people to move the ship towards the east. The ship is moving towards the east anyway, because that's God's plan. What God would love is if everybody would be on the same page with him and enjoy the trip and anticipate the arrival in the promised land. But even if everyone on the ship was facing the wrong direction, unbeknownst to them, they are going where they need to be, and they will arrive in the promised land. That is the destination of Spaceship Earth. We are moving towards godliness. Some people are fighting it every step of the way. But as they're fighting it, even they are moving in the right direction. So we need to be very optimistic. With or without us, the world will become what it is meant to be. Except that with us, it would be much more enjoyable for God Himself. So our task on Rosh Hashanah is to bring pleasure to God's kingship so that He can be our king with pleasure. It's a pretty exciting task, a very elegant task, to partner with God in creation. And who should do this? Everybody. And that's why in the prayers, the central prayers of Rosh Hashanah, and again on Yom Kippur, what are we praying for? That every created being should know its creator. Every being with a breath that breathes and lives should serve his creator. That there should be a harmony and a unity among all living things to not only move in the right direction, but want to enjoy it, participate actively in bringing ourselves to the promised land. How do we do this? First, by becoming enthusiastic about our King, our Father in heaven, our Vinu Malkeinu, and giving Him more enthusiasm and more pleasure in doing that job of mastering the world, being master of the universe. Once we do that and we blow the shofar and coronate God, letting God know that we're absolutely on the same page. We want what He wants, and we want to partner with Him. Then we make resolutions concerning the coming year. God wants kosher, I will keep kosher. God wants Shabbat, I will keep Shabbat. God wants tefillin from men, men will put on the tefillin. God wants Shabbos candles from women, women will light Shabbos candles, go to the mikveh. Whatever we can do to make the physical world more God-like, so that God can enjoy His own creation. It's a romantic concept. It's an intimate relationship that we're building, bringing pleasure to what could otherwise be just drudgery. And from both sides. There are people who are already religious. They're committed, they're religious, they're dedicated. They have no idea what they're accomplishing. They have no idea how valuable this is to their Creator. All they know is what their obligations are, and they hope to fulfill their obligations so that they can get the benefits of serving God. The benefits of serving God. The greatest benefit of serving God is to know how meaningful your service of God is. If you don't know how much God appreciates your mitzvah, you're not getting the full benefits. In fact, once you know how much God treasures your mitzvah, you won't need any further reward. That will be reward enough. It's only that we don't know. We can't even imagine how much pleasure, what kind of infinite satisfaction God gets when a Jew does a mitzvah. Sometimes, even when a Jew tries to do a mitzvah and doesn't actually accomplish it, the pleasure that that gives God is indescribable. So let me share with you a recent story. 2 years ago, Pesach, Corona was in its full glory. Lockdown, isolation, very, very intense. There's a man lives in Manhattan who is alone. His wife passed away. They never had children. Not the most observant, practicing Jew. And he was sitting alone in his apartment, literally locked in and all alone. And one night, it dawned on him, this is the night of Pesach. This is the first Seder night. He hadn't been paying attention. It wasn't that important to him. And all of a sudden he realizes it's Pesach. He went into the pantry and he found no matzah. But he did find rice cakes. So he took 3 rice cakes. If you're very nearsighted, from a distance, a rice cake could be mistaken for a matzah. The texture is a little bit similar. He took 3 rice cakes and the wine that he had in the house. And he found his grandmother's Maxwell House Coffee Haggadah. Some of you might remember Maxwell House Coffee used to give out a Haggadah. Tiny little thing. That's all he had. He had never made a Seder in his life, and he hardly ever participated in a Seder. But he tried his best, followed the instructions in this little Haggadah. After Yontif, he calls me, and he tells me what he did. And he says, I didn't really expect it to be meaningful. I didn't know what I was doing. In fact, it was kind of strange asking myself the 4 questions. But I was surprised, he said, pleasantly surprised, because as I went through the Seder, felt meaningful. In fact, it felt like someone was listening. My respect for this man grew by leaps and bounds. What a sensitivity. What an incredible, refined soul to actually feel that somebody was listening, because somebody is listening. In fact, your father, who has passed away, who is in heaven, comes to your Seder when you ask the 4 questions. He listens because the 4 questions are addressed to your father. When he said that, I was overwhelmed and jealous. So I told some of my religious relatives, they're not Chabad, but they're very religious. And their reaction was not the same as mine. They were horrified. They were offended. They thought it was blasphemous. You cannot make a Seder on rice cakes. That is not a mitzvah. It's a mockery of the mitzvah. And the wine he used was probably not even kosher wine. There was no Seder. Chutzpah of him to do that. On the other hand, when I spoke to some of my more liberal friends and I told them the story, their reaction was the opposite. Their reaction was, the man is not into it. He's not observant. He didn't even know it was Pesach until the last minute. So why did he even bother with that? Next year, if he remembers and he's in the mood, then he'll buy some matzah and do the Seder thing. But this, why? It was unnecessary. But I know that if I would ask the Rebbe or the previous Rebbes, all the way back to the Baal Shem Tov, if I would say, what do you think of this man's Seder? I'm sure they would say, of all the Sedarim, of all the Seders in all of Manhattan and maybe of all the world, that night, 2 years ago on Pesach, this man's Seder brought God to tears. Because when you think about it, why did he bother? Why bother? He's not religious. It's not an obligation he feels he must fulfill. Nobody in his family was making a Seder. None of his friends would even ask whether he made a Seder. Nobody would know whether he made a Seder. And if people heard that he made a Seder, their reaction would be silly, foolish. Why? So he would get no credit. He would get no respect. Why did he bother? That's what brings God to tears. 3,000 years later, after the Exodus from Egypt, a Jew in Manhattan feels like he shouldn't let the night go by without doing something. Because after all, I'm a Jew. This is what gives God the pleasure, the absolute infinite pleasure in being our king. Over such people, God feels, for them I would do anything. Even such menial tasks as providing health and parnasa and safety. The things that a human king is supposed to provide, which unfortunately no king is providing. So on the one hand, when we go to shul to hear the shofar, or take a shofar to where there are Jews so that they can hear the shofar, we should be in awe of the responsibility. The world is a different world when God is running the world with pleasure than the world would be if God was running the world with less pleasure. So we are affecting the entire world. The fate of all nations is decided on Rosh Hashanah. Not the judgment of good and evil, reward and punishment. No, that That's more like on Yom Kippur. On Rosh Hashanah, it's not reward and punishment. It's pleasure or less pleasure. The nation that gives God more pleasure gets more blessing because he loves taking care of them. A nation that gives God less pleasure, God will take care of them, but it won't be the same. Where does all this pleasure really begin? With the Jewish people. We have the responsibility for the rest of the world. Because when we willingly, enthusiastically coronate God as our king, the whole world is different. So it's pretty awesome, right? At the same time, it is so pleasant. It's so appealing. It's so pleasurable. To give God pleasure is such a pleasure. This will explain a very simple statement that the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, made many years ago. The Rebbe was suffering from sciatic pain, and it had flared up. Some people who were close to the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin was visiting the Rebbetzin, and they were concerned. And they said to the Rebbetzin, "How is the Rebbe feeling?" And the Rebbetzin said, "My husband is not afraid of pain. The only thing my husband is afraid of is Rosh Hashanah." When the Rebbe would blow the shofar, he felt the weight of the world hung in the balance. That awesome responsibility is awesome. But at the same time, it is so pleasurable. So it's an awesome pleasure. And that's called rejoicing with trembling. We have reason to tremble and we have reason to rejoice. Concerning the book, Creating a Life That Matters, the hidden meaning in the title. Obviously, we all want our lives to matter. That's a very human instinct. We desperately need our lives to matter. Otherwise, we get some pretty depressed. People who think their lives don't matter do not enjoy life. And every life does matter, whether you know it or not. But to know how and how much your life matters gives you a whole different experience of life. But the hidden meaning, creating a life that matters, is that your life should matter not only to you, but to the whole world. Every one of us, in some small way, affects the entire world. And if we're affecting the entire world, which is God's creation, we're affecting God. So we want to live lives that matter to the creator of the world. And that's where the Torah comes in. What does the Torah tell us? What matters to God? Now we have a blueprint. Now we have a GPS. Now we can follow and connect the dots. We know what matters to God, which matters to the whole universe, which should matter to each of us individually. So in this book, which is kind of a compilation. And the best way to describe the book is by the book's author, Rivka Goldstein. Rivka Goldstein is a woman born in China who lived in Singapore, who converted to Judaism, who had one child, and she realized that there is no manual for how to raise a Jewish child. She was given all sorts of instructions. Everybody told her something else, and it was just overwhelming, and it wasn't coming together. So after hearing all the YouTube lectures and all the tapes and all, she gathered it all together, and she said, I am going to write a book that will give my son, when he grows up, a manual. Will give me a manual on how to raise him, and then when he grows up, he will have a manual, which means it's got to cover many topics, fundamental topics, like how to raise a child, like how to have a healthy relationship, husband and wife, parent and child, how to be a Jew, how to have a healthy relationship with God, how to involve others with God, how to build a life that matters. So all the fundamental heavy questions, the issues of faith, the issues of reward and punishment, life after death, all of these things which every child is going to ask about, and we have to be able to answer it in a way that not only satisfies the question, but gives the child a path, a manual. So that's what this book is. Rivka Goldstein calls it a manual. Her husband, Binyamin, calls it a reference book. I don't know what to call it, but I'm really thankful that they put so much work into it and were kind enough to put my name on it just because they heard it from me. But they did all the work. They built it, they made it, they published it, and hopefully it will make a difference. And that's all we're trying to do, is make a difference. Move the people on the ship to turn around and enjoy the journey, because we're going in the right direction. So what should we do for Rosh Hashanah? Mitzvah number 1. Anyone you know who may not hear the shofar on the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, see what you can do. Get them to come to a minyan, to a shul, to a Chabad house, or get the shofar to go to their house, or to wherever Jews gather, and make sure that as many Jews as possible coronate God by agreeing with the sound of the shofar.
So I just want to pop in there, Rabbi Friedman, and say that we're going to be having 25 locations of shofar blowing all over Westmount at different hours on Rosh Hashanah. So we're having it in front of buildings, we're having it in parks, we're having it in front of apartment buildings, in front of office buildings. So we call the Rosh Shofar in the park, shofar on the street, shofar at your house. If you want someone to go blow shofar outside of your house or in your backyard because you're concerned about going inside a building, we will have someone to do that as well. Just go to, just email us, info@chabadwestmount.com. We're going to organize that. But right now we do have 25 locations of outdoor shofar blowings. If you want to see all the locations, it's on our website, or you can email me, Devorah@chabadwestmount.com, and I'll give you a copy of all those shofar blowings. So yes, I agree with Rabbi Friedman. No one should miss out the shofar blowing this year. If you're not comfortable to go inside a building, don't worry. There are other options available for you. You don't have to miss out. So I just wanted to put in that 2 cents there.
Dvorah, I envy you.
I'm not doing the blowing.
Doesn't matter. You're making it happen, and God owes you big time.
My husband, my sons-in-law, and some other great volunteers in the neighborhood. We're very lucky that we have a lot of enthusiastic helpers.
I'm jealous of them too. I'm capable of a lot of jealousy. So, can we have some comments, some conversation?
Yeah, everyone, if you would like to ask Friedman a question, go for it. I think that one of the questions that certainly is on my mind, and speaking to people, is that everyone is so stressed out from COVID because we all thought that the vaccine is going to do it. And first we were worried about the vaccine, and then people finally got the vaccine, and people knew who got the vaccine, and everyone was okay. And then after that, as soon as everyone's doubly vaxxed and we think we're going to open up again and everything's going to go back to normal, we hear there's another variant that may not do so well with a vaccine. So it's just, since this all started, it's been this kind of roller coaster of how long is this going to last? It's going to be a wait. We're going to deal with it soon. And then a little hiccup that actually turns everything on its head. So I don't know if we need words of chizuk or if we need perspective. I do often think about my grandmother and what she lived through, very tumultuous years and very difficult times. And I remember my grandmother actually getting a little nervous when someone had a cough, and I never understood it. But that being, because she lived through cholera and all kinds of plagues. But that being said, if there's something that we can, I don't know, hold on to as we go into the new year, making it that this year that we go in with a positive mindset of speaking to so many people who just feel very down. It's like they're tired. It's like it's going on for too long. Everyone was able to do the social distancing for a while, and we become afraid of each other. People are afraid to go out. People are afraid to be seen and to see and to be seen. And it's difficult. And if you have any words of encouragement, as we try to look forward towards a meaningful year, finding meaning maybe in this darkness or in this uncertainty, maybe, if you can address that. I've been hearing that from a lot of people as I have conversations.
Looking at our own reality, how do we function? How do we go about life? Imagine if COVID had no name. Nobody knew what it was. People were just suffering and not surviving. Everybody in the world would say, what is God doing? This is God doing it. We don't know what's going on. As soon as you put a name on it, you say, oh, it's a flu. Ah. Yeah, and we even know the variant. It's a coronavirus. Ah. It came from China. Oh. It attacks the lungs. Right. See? Now we know what it is. So God is no longer in the picture. Once we put a name on it, now we know that it's doing it, not God. That's so foolish. It's so short-sighted. I'll tell you a good example. There was a professor in Minnesota, a professor of public health. He told the Rebbe one year, back in the 70s, I think it was, very excited. He was offered a very prestigious position with an increase in salary, of course, at the university as a member of a research team. They were going to research and study how do the super viruses that you get only in hospitals, how do they travel from room to room, from wing to wing, from one building of the hospital to another? How does it travel? The Rebbe said to him, that's very interesting, but you should take an interest more in how they're created in the first place. How do superviruses develop? The professor, who was really quite enamored with his new offer, said, no, the in thing among the professors in the academia, the in thing right now is to study how it travels. So he's very excited about doing that. And so that's what he did. A year and a half later, everything shifted. All the funding, all the research moved to trying to figure out how these superviruses get started and created in the first place. And he was left out of that. So the Rebbe was trying to give him a heads up about what's going to be popular in the future. But look at the difference. How logical, how sensible is it? Instead of studying how it travels from room to room, can you figure out what's causing it in the first place and maybe stop it from existing, not just from traveling? We should always be thinking back to the source of the problem, not get hung up on the symptoms. So yes, this is a virus type of illness. Yes, it's a coronavirus type of illness. Can we back up a little bit to where it's coming from? It's not happening because something got loose in a laboratory in China. Whether intentional, not intentional, that's not the question. God is doing this, and the question is why? And how are we supposed to respond? So the first most important thing is stop worshiping the virus. To say it is killing people, that's idol worship. It doesn't kill anybody. Viruses exist everywhere all the time. Why do some of them turn deadly? We don't really know. So let's try to get to the source of the problem. Don't worship the symptoms. God is putting us through a really strange, unprecedented experience. And that is total confusion. You know, we developed a kind of a casual, comfortable, rather smug opinion of ourselves. We have technology, we have science, we have sophisticated medicine. We are really capable, powerful societies. We can do almost anything. To the moon and back, kids stuff. Every billionaire can do that now. Now we got to go to Mars, and we can do that too. We're so powerful. We know what we're doing. Well, it's been 3 years. We don't know what we're doing. We have no idea what we're doing. The real pain, the real danger of the last 3 years is the confusion, the uncertainty, not knowing what we're dealing with, not knowing who to believe, not knowing who to trust or what to trust. In Tehillim it says, I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my salvation come? We don't know anymore. We thought science would solve our problems. We thought politics will solve our problems. Just elect the right person. We thought medicine would solve all of our problems. We thought that with enough money, we can solve all our problems. What do we think today? Today it's become very clear. God runs the world. Only He can solve problems. And it's always been this way. It's just we were intoxicated with our own self-importance. So we're simply realizing the truth. We can't make the world work. Only the King and Master of the universe can do that. Our job is to partner with Him in constructive ways. In order to do that, He has to tell us what He's up to and how we can join Him. So when He's keeping Shabbos and not creating, He tells us, stop creating, keep Shabbos with me. When during the weekdays when He is creating the world, He tells us to be creative. 6 days you shall work like I do. On the seventh I rest, rest with me. The Torah is the manual, the user's manual for the universe. People are realizing this. People are maturing. People are becoming sensitive. People are becoming better as a result of this chaos, of this humbling confusion. We're becoming sane, or saner. So how should we handle it? We should handle it with a renewed respect for the Master of the universe, who can create the problem, who can solve the problem, and who has a reason for everything He does. No panicking. The virus is not out to get you. It's not going to destroy the world. The best reaction to a virus is to be enthusiastic about life. That is the true antidote. Sometimes we need medical assistance. But what is the real cure? The virus is a lifeless parasite. We can't allow it to steal energy from us because it has none of its own. So it steals life like a parasite. If we don't let it, that is the best and greatest antidote. So if we all become a little more enthusiastic about life, we will develop this herd immunity. It's a nasty way of describing it, but you know what I mean. If more people are more enthusiastic about life, viruses can't leech life from us. It's when we give up a little bit on life, then the leeches come and the parasites come and they pick up where we are weak, where we are vulnerable. Let's not be vulnerable. Let's be thoroughly enthusiastic about life, claim all of life for life's purpose, and then the virus will disappear. That's the true cure. That's what God is asking of us. The rest is up to Him.
Indeed. Indeed.
If we don't know that by now, I don't know what will convince us.
I do agree that the past few years have shown us that there are things that are outside of our control, and trying to be in control is actually causing a lot of the anxiety that people are feeling, because when they feel that they failed, there's a sense of helplessness. So I think that these are truly words to ponder as we go into the new year. And I want to thank you, Rabbi Friedman, for coming on and joining our community again with words of wisdom and words to think about, words that we can use to introspect as we go into a new year. And a new year brings in new blessings, as you mentioned. And I want to wish everyone who joined us today that this year should be a year of blessings for all of us and all of you, revealed blessings, open and revealed good in every aspect of your life. And it should be a year that we all feel close to our neshama, in tune with it, close to God. And as Rabbi Friedman mentioned, this God consciousness that really sets us on our 2 feet. And I want to wish everyone a ksiva v'chasima tova, a blessed new year, and a year that you show your potential in that which matters and making your year matter and indeed your life matter. Thank you everyone for joining us. A ksiva v'chasima tova. If you need anything for the high holidays, if you need anything for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, if you have any questions, please know you're not isolated. You may be at home, but we are here for you for anything that you do need. So please contact us in case there is something that you need, and we'll be happy to do it. And again, I think Rabbi Friedman, I'm going to echo what you said, to reach out to people, to someone else who we think that may need to have that outreach, and to touch base with them. And there's nothing greater than the gift of giving and caring for someone else to take away our own worries. Thank you everyone for joining us. Rabbi Friedman, thank you very much again. It's been an honor and a pleasure, especially right before Rosh Hashanah. And anyone who wants to know about the book, you can go to Amazon, Creating a Life That Matters, by Manis Friedman, together with a co-author that Rabbi Friedman mentioned before. Her name just escapes me this minute. So
Rivka Goldstein.
Rivka Goldstein. I knew it was a Rivka Goldstein, and really a book that touches on a lot of Rabbi Friedman's themes that he has touched upon during the years, and ideas that really bring, again, a new perspective on things that matter. So thank you very much, everyone, and Shana Tova. Thank you.
Let me end with a joke.
Yes, go for it.
An atheist said to God, that's funny already, right? An atheist said to God, "We used to need you, but now we don't need you anymore. Because we have the technology, anything you can do, we can do." So God says, "Can you make a man out of dust?" And he said, "Yes, we have the technology." And we do. We have some awesome technology. So God said, "Okay, let me see you do it." So he starts to gather up some dust. And God says, "Oh, no, not my dust. Start with your dust." Well, that was the end of that experiment.
Indeed.
So when it comes right down to it, we are very impressive in our abilities and our technology. We're very impressive. But when it gets right down to basics, we can't create our own dust. So we must recognize God's hand in all of our affairs and all the events, certainly in the global events. And we have to partner with God in how to make more life out of this lifeless little thing, which shows us how powerful little things can be. Even a negative thing, a lifeless little creature, tiny, invisible. So if a tiny virus can make so much trouble, are you surprised that a tiny mitzvah can change the whole world for the good?
Beautiful, a beautiful thought.
Don't dismiss those tiny things. They're awesome. So do a little mitzvah. It'll change the world.
Well, that's a very powerful idea, a beautiful thought, and a very powerful way to end this session. And yes, indeed, a tiny mitzvah. Never to underestimate the power of a tiny mitzvah and what it can do for the people around us, for our lives, and indeed for the world. That is very, very powerful and something to hold on to as we enter the new year.
Don't forget to dip the apple in the honey. And have a sweet new year.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Manis, I'm your biggest fan.
Who said that?
Me.
My son, we have an audience waiting.
No, cap them on a high. No, we love you. I listen to all your classes.
Okay, now go make the world better. Go make the world better.
Yeah.
You have what it takes.
Yeah.
Shana Tova.
That was a great crash. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Friedman, again. Have a Shana Tova U'Sufa, everyone. Thank you.